Right, hello. Hi, everyone who's joined so far. I know there's some people who may still be joining, but welcome to today's PortSwigginar on the topic of Burp Suite Enterprise Edition. So we actually have a mixture of users on the call today, including some of our lovely existing customers, those who may not seen the product in a few years, and also some current trialists. So it's great to see you all here. Before we get going, we'll provide some introductions. So I'm Hannah O'Malley. I'm part of the Enterprise Advocate team here at PortSwigginar, and we work with our trialists and customers, supporting their evaluations and procurement of Burp Suite Enterprise Edition. Alex, want to say hello?
Yeah, hi folks. So Alex, I'm a member of the technical support team. So we help with the day-to-day support for our product set and customer base, and we also help customers get set up with POCs and trials.
Bill, thank you, Alex. So we do also have Adam, James, Maya, and Sophie. They're in the background today managing the Q&A facility. So it's in the Zoom toolbar. Please use it to ask any questions you have during the session. We will try and respond to them all as quickly as possible. And we will be picking some out to answer live during the Q&A at the end. If we don't manage to answer them all during the session, then not to worry. We will be following up via email with the answers. This session is also being recorded. It will be available on our PortSwigginar YouTube channel. So if you do wish to watch anything back after today's session or share the link with other members of the team, it'll be available to do so. And finally, the next Swigginar will be on the 13th of July. So if you have any colleagues that would benefit from attending, please let us know and we can issue you the invite. So, as a quick recap of the agenda, we'll be discussing the different versions of Burp Suite. So this includes Burp Suite Professional and Burp Suite Enterprise. We'll cover the new features and enhancements within Burp Suite Enterprise Edition. Following that, we'll be touching on our licensing model, which leads us nicely into the product overview. This will be featuring our new deployment methods, how to get scanning quickly, and integrations with CI/CD pipelines and issue tracking tools. We will then give you a sneak peek into our 2022 roadmap and round this webinar off with a Q&A session. And again, don't worry if you don't get the chance to make notes on all of this. As I mentioned, the recording of this session will be available on the PortSwigginar YouTube and emailed to you as well. So, our Burp Suite products. Many of you will be familiar and likely use Burp Suite Professional, which is our manual penetration testing toolkit, which has features such as proxy, intruder, and repeater. Burp Suite Enterprise Edition and Burp Professional both use the infamous Burp Scanner, which sits at the heart of them. Burp Suite Enterprise Edition uses the scanner to carry out automated web vulnerability testing. These scans can be triggered by the inbuilt scheduler or via integration with a CI/CD pipeline. This is something that Alex will demonstrate further in the session. The main reason why we wanted to highlight this is it's often thought that both Pro and Enterprise are a tiered product set, when in fact they're designed to be used to complement each other. So you can use Burp Suite Enterprise to provide the automated scanning and faster feedback earlier in the software development lifecycle, and then Professional for the more targeted manual testing. In fact, the majority of our Burp Suite Enterprise customers also use Professional. If you do need any further clarification, however, please just let the team know here in the Q&A box on Zoom. So for those of you who may not seen the product for a few years or at all, it's worth a quick recap on what's new. I won't cover all of the items, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but just to discuss a few. We have enhanced reporting of scam results against specific compliance frameworks, including PCI DSS and OWASP Top 10. You can now deploy Burp Suite Enterprise Edition to an existing Kubernetes cluster much more easy using a Helm chart. Alex will also cover this in greater detail shortly. The Pro users on the call should be familiar with our Burp application store. The 2021.8 release added support for Burp extensions in Burp Suite Enterprise Edition. It's worth noting that not all extensions are available in both Pro and Enterprise, but this is because Enterprise extensions must be written in Java and not make any changes to the UI as they would do in Pro. We have also added support for bulk actions in the UI. This allows you to add sites, move and delete sites and folders, launch quick scans, and cancel or delete scans, all in bulk, whereas previously this was done per action. Finally, we have made huge improvements to Burp Scanner in terms of its ability to scan single-page applications that are now synonymous with modern web architecture. So, how is Burp Suite Enterprise Edition licensed? Burp Suite Enterprise Edition is licensed on concurrent scans. We don't limit you to the number of applications, domains, URLs, users, or anything else, only scan concurrency. Unlike most other automated web vulnerability scanners, Burp Suite Enterprise Edition scans can be assigned and reassigned across any websites, applications, or URLs. We're often asked, how many concurrent scans do I need? And this truly does all depend on the size of your organization and how secure you aim to be. Companies with a larger web portfolio that they need to scan more frequently will need more scanning resources compared to a smaller organization who is just starting out with automated scanning. So let's see an example. You have 500 applications, but you're probably not going to be scanning them all day, every day. More realistically, you'll be hitting 50 apps per day. And that will be done with a combination of scheduled scans and scans triggered by a CI/CD pipeline. So assuming your scan times fit into a working day, you would only need to license 50 concurrent scans. And if you did kick off more scans than you had available, they'd just be queued until they're free. So this leads us on to pricing. A Burp Suite Enterprise Edition's license with one concurrent scan, which is our minimum, is $4,999 US. Then each additional concurrent scan is $499 US. So using the example that I just went through, a Burp Suite Enterprise Edition license with 50 concurrent scans would be $29,450 US. And this is just based off a 12-month subscription. However, we do offer multi-year subscriptions for up to 10 years. So now I'll be handing it over to Alex, who can begin by running us through the architecture and deployment.
Okay, folks, so we'll do a quick run through of the architecture and some of the deployment options, which includes the new Kubernetes method as well. And then we'll jump into the demo, take a quick whiz through the UI, and we'll go from there. So Burp Suite Enterprise Edition is made up of a number of core components, and those include the web server. So this is essentially for user access. We have the enterprise server itself, which does all the business logic behind the application. And then you'll have one or more scanning machines, and these are the entities that are responsible for performing the actual scans. All of those will connect to some kind of SQL database, either one that we provide for you, and there's some choice for something to use. That's more your preference. So what actually is a scanning machine? So this is going to be a virtual or physical machine that actually runs the scans. Think of them as your automated penetration testers effectively. And you can run these, at least initially, on the same server that you have your web server, enterprise server. And that's actually what the wizard will drive you through on initial installation. And that's pretty good for a trial or POC purpose. And then as you grow, in order to support that scale in terms of the number of concurrent scans that you're doing, you can deploy as many of those externally as you wish to do so. So in terms of those deployment options that are available to you, we have the standard installer, and this is essentially just going to our release page, grabbing the installer relative to your OS of choice. And that's going to be Windows, various flavors of Linux or Mac OS. And then you can go through the installation process via the wizard. That could be a single machine deployment, which is typical for trials, and then multi-system deployment, but we'll talk about those in a bit more detail in a sec. If your preference is something more around containers, then as we mentioned, we've got the new Kubernetes deployment, and this is provided via a Helm chart. That's going to work with any x86-based cluster. There are some basic prereqs that you need to meet, but the idea is we're not sort of hamstringing you in terms of what that infrastructure needs to look like. And then we also have the advantage of auto-scaling, which again we'll cover in a sec. So that standard installer single machine deployment looks like this. And as the name suggests, everything is installed on the same machine. Could be a laptop, VM, physical desktop, whatever your choice is. All the components live together, and it's great for a POC or trial review. Nice and simple to get set up. And as you mentioned, everything sits together. You can see the kind of connectivity that is required externally as well, both from a user perspective and the target applications that we're trying to reach. Much more likely for a production deployment, we start to split those components out, and this is where the notion of scale comes in. So we're still going to house the enterprise server and web server together. You might use our bundle database still, which is a H2 database, but it's very common for customers to utilize their own external database, be that Postgres, Microsoft SQL, again, whatever kind of your preference internally is. That'll live on its own physical or virtual machine. And then the same goes for the scanning machines. So again, you can deploy as many of these as you wish externally, and these are going to support you relative to that concurrent scan limit with whatever you've purchased in terms of the licensing. So we need to reach back out to portswigginar.net. This is for license activation and how we deliver product updates. You'll also connect to Burp Collaborator Service, which you'll be familiar with if you're an existing pro user. Works the same for enterprise. You can still deploy a private collaborator if you desire to do so. And then, of course, those target applications that we want to scan as well. So they're the two standard options, single machine versus multi-machine. And then, as we mentioned, we've got the Kubernetes deployment. So in theory, your Kubernetes deployment should work, provided you meet these three prerequisites. So we're going to need some kind of ingress solution. Typically, that's going to be a load balancer or an ingress controller. We're going to need a persistent volume claim, which will be application name -PVC. And that needs to be shared by all the nodes in the namespace. And then this notion of cluster node auto-scaling must be installed and enabled. And what that gives you, in contrast to the standard deployment where we pre-provision the scanning machines and they sit there all the time, they might not necessarily be scanning all the time. In a sort of cloud world, that's resources that we're paying for. So with the auto scaling, we actually don't pre-provision those scanning machines. They will be deployed when you initiate a scan job. They'll run while the scan runs, and then they'll be killed off once the scan finishes. And again, that has an inherent cost benefit when we're talking around containers and cloud speak. So other than those prereqs, you should be able to run that on any cluster, kind of irrespective of its underlying setup. So, if you're in AWS, Azure, GCP, or even private, you should be good to go. So if you kind of put all that together from Hannah's coverage of the licensing to the architecture, this is essentially what an example purchase and deployment would look like. So let's just say you've purchased your base Burp Suite Enterprise license and you've gone for 15 concurrent scans, because through the trial, that's kind of what you've determined is the sweet spot for your concurrency. You've decided you want to deploy via the standard installer multi-machine deployment, and it's going to be to AWS EC2. So we need to deploy the enterprise and web server together as we saw earlier. So that's going to be one image, and then an external database. In our case, it's going to be Postgres, but again, the choice is yours there. That's another image. And then we need to deploy our scanning machines and distribute our scan concurrency, again, relative to that 15 concurrent scans under our license. So from a sweet spot perspective, we'll probably deploy 3 scanning machines, each with that limit of 5 applied. That's good distribution from a resource perspective. And that gives us our ability to scan up to 15 concurrent at the same time. Now, as your applications scale, that concurrency can scale with you too. So at any time, you could deploy that additional scanning machine, increase your concurrency in terms of the licensing, and then you're good to go in this example with another 5 concurrent scans, bringing our total to 20. So in that example, our initial purchase is going to be $11,985 across a 1-year subscription. At some point, we've added those additional 5 concurrent scans. Well, that's going to be prorated against our 1-year subscription at $2,495. Okay, and now we're ready for the demo. So regardless of which method you choose to deploy by, this is what the UI is going to look like. So I'll access this against either the specified URL port that we configured during installation, or it's just going to be running on our local host, and we'll log in. So for those that have trialed in the past, probably looks quite different. We've done a lot of improvements in terms of ease of use while still presenting the sort of useful and required data that we want as part of our sort of long-term scanning cadence. Now, typically job one, once your installation is complete, is to organize your team. So it's all role-based access control. As Hannah mentioned earlier, we're not restricting you on the number of users that can utilize Burp Suite Enterprise. Very much a team focus. So we have roles, which will comprise a number of permissions. So you can see some built-in ones here. So maybe we've got people who are kicking off scans. Maybe those are looking at results. Maybe we have somebody who maintains the site for us. And then we can also append those to groups, again, that more of a team focus, which we can assign as we kind of see fit. These are all locally managed users within Burp. If we prefer to use some sort of existing AD or IDP, if we jump into settings and go to integrations, we can see that SAML is supported along with LDAP. So you can pass along those existing user structures and just assign permissions with similar named groups within Burp. If you'd rather just have SAML or LDAP kind of do the authentication, not necessarily manage the groups in that fashion, you can see there we've got the SCIM support as well. Once our team's set up, we'll probably want to check in on our scanning machines, make sure everything's ready to go for our first scan. So we can see here that we have a local scanning machine. This is a single machine deployment, local IP address. Down here is our license limit in terms of the concurrency. So as part of the trial license, you will get 35 concurrent scans with which to test with. And then you can see here in this column, we can assign that concurrency limit amongst our scanning machines. So it's up to you how you distribute and deploy those scanning machines, but it will always tie back to that limit. And then we can see in the busy column, as we assign scans or scan jobs to those scanning machines, that will fill up, in this case to the 5. Any more scans we add in terms of scan jobs, they'll just queue until that becomes available, and so on and so forth. So once we've done those two elements, our team's set up, our scanning machines are ready to go, we can do our first scan. Now, as a new installation, we might want to add all our sites en masse. We've got a lot of applications that we test against. So this is where the bulk action stuff comes in. We can complete the CSV template with the required info and just import those en masse. I'll give you an idea of what it looks like to create a new site. So if we call this test, we can distribute everything into folders. So you can see on the left-hand side here, we've got some sites already set up and distributed by folders. In our case, personnel, could be geographical location, could be teams, entirely up to you. And then our site scope. So the most important one being the site URL that we want to target. So this is going to be the highest level URL that we want to include as part of that scan. And all subdirectories will be scanned by default. Again, by default, that's going to be HTTP and HTTPS, or we can specify one of those protocols if desired. And then we have some inclusive and exclusive rules around what we want to do with those URLs. So maybe we're specifically calling an API endpoint, for example, or maybe we want to exclude URLs because we're not scanning the whole of our application and we want to narrow it down. Next, we probably want to apply some form of scan configuration. So if we leave it blank, it's just going to run our default settings, which is a kind of down the middle type scan in terms of the crawl and audit. We've got some built-in options that are going to change the behavior of that crawl or audit in some way. So maybe we want to limit the time the crawl takes because we just want a quick scan. Maybe we want something more thorough in terms of the audit. Maybe we want to minimize false positives. Those are all built-in configurations that you can take advantage of. But you do have complete control, just like with Pro, to create a custom scan configuration, add that to your library, and then select from this list. If our application needs any kind of authentication, we can add that here. So we've got a basic option for username and passwords. So it's a fairly simple login form, username, password. We can add that here, and the crawler will use those during the scan. Anything more complex is going to be our recorded login sequence. If you're familiar from Burp Suite Pro, it works the same. So we record the process of ourselves logging into the application in browser via the plugin that we provide. That's going to give us a sequence that we can replay when we're doing the scan, and it's just going to repeat those steps to get us logged in. So anything around SSO, multi-page login, recorded login sequence is going to achieve that for us. As Hannah mentioned, at this stage, we can also add site-level extensions. So we've got these listed on the BAP store in terms of what enterprise extensions are available so far. We expect that list to grow in the future as more community-based extensions are created. And of course, if there's anything in Pro that you like the look of and you'd like it in Enterprise, we have all this documented in terms of creating your own extension as well. We have this concept of scanning pools. So we looked at the scanning machines earlier, but we can also organize those into pools where we're dedicating resource, particularly to sites. So if that's of any benefit to you, where you know a resource is going to be available for a particular site, we can also utilize the pool as well. That's our site creation, pretty straightforward. If we now go to scans, once we've got our site, we can start to build out our schedule on top of that. So if I go to new scan, we can select from our site list the application that we want to target. And we can either do this ad hoc, so run the scan as soon as possible and run it at once, or we can schedule and repeat. So we might be doing daily, weekly, monthly, yearly scans. We can build out any kind of schedule we want. We can do that forever, repeat a set number of times or until a particular date. And we've got some more features coming in terms of what that schedule might look like. One example being along the lines of a blackout window for running no scans within that particular window. Once that's all done, we can kick off our scan, and that will then assign it to an available scanning machine or scanning pool if that's what we've defined, and it will go away and scan the application for you. If we look at a scan that's already completed, this is where we start to build out that picture of our security posture, both in terms of the scan we've just done, but also over time. So all of this can be aggregated at the site level with the kind of metrics that we're seeing here. So issues that have been fixed, issues that have regressed, etc. That's all trackable across a period of time. We can start to drill into our specific issues that have been located. Everything is categorized by severity. So we can see here high, medium, low, or informational. That's color coded across as well. And then we'll also have a confidence level, so certain firm, tentative, or a false positive that we've marked. We can select a particular category, see the URL that it was located at, and then we're into our advisory, where we get issue detail, background information, remediation, and also some sort of reference to our Web Security Academy. That'll be even more detail on the particular vulnerability and also a sandbox environment where you can carry out a similar payload. And then the classifications that specific vulnerability will link back to as well. We can view the request and the response. And if after initial investigation, actually we determine that this might be a false positive, we can mark it as such. And then there are some kind of global rules around this. So maybe we just mark this particular issue, but we might not want to keep it cropping up if we're repeating scans on a regular basis. So we can do this across all of our scans for, let's say, the particular site or the particular URL that it was located at, etc. The kind of choice is yours there. Now, if we were doing some sort of issue tracking as well, we could integrate that. So if we jump back into settings and integrations, we can see here we support Jira, GitLab, and Trello. There are more planned on our roadmap integration-wise, and we've also got Slack for notifications for scans as well. So where we saw that raise false positive button, we would have the ability to raise a manual ticket if we had this integration configured, or it can be automated. So based on that severity and confidence level that we spoke around, if a scan finds that, we can automatically raise tickets with our ticket tracker as well. If we just jump back into that scan, take a quick look at the reporting. So we've got a few different options here once the scan is complete. So we can generate a summary or detailed report. So if I download this, it's going to generate a HTML report and collate all of that information together. And I can use that from a reporting standpoint. We've just added our compliance report. So this is the kind of start of our journey for compliance reporting. So far, we've got OWASP top 10 and PCI DSS, as Hannah mentioned earlier. So this is actually going to classify those results into the specific report that we've selected. So in the case of OWASP top 10, it's going to relate and group all of our results into those categories. So folks, that's kind of the 101 in terms of enterprise, getting set up, users, scanning machine, and scans. As you move kind of through a trial or POC, you start to get to grips with the configurations. Maybe you start playing more around custom configurations. Additionally, we can start to then build out our installation. by performing additional integrations. That might be via the GraphQL API. So that exposes most of the features that we can see within the UI. So if that's either from a data generation or a management standpoint, both can be achieved. Another popular one being, if I just rearrange my tabs here, is our CI/CD integration, which I'll show you in one sec. If I can get rid of this. There we go. So you might not want to be handling scans through the UI. You might want to integrate those into your CI/CD platform. So performing scans before we're publishing changes to applications. So we've got drivers for this very purpose. Some are specific to platforms. In this case, we're looking at Jenkins, for which there is a specific driver. We also have a generic driver, which is Java-based, and is designed to work with pretty much anything. So don't worry if we don't have a specific integration for your platform. The generic driver is designed to work with anything. So in this case, we've added the driver to Jenkins, and we've created a freestyle project. And what that driver is giving the ability to do is, if we jump down here to our build, we can see here we've got a build step for Burp site-driven scan. Just to give an example, if we go to add another build step, we've got the Burp site-driven scan there, and also our legacy Burp scan option, which is an older method but still available. And this is going to integrate with our Burp Suite Enterprise installation. So we can see here we're connecting to the URL and port. We've generated an API key from an API user with an enterprise. And those two sets of effectively credentials allow us to populate that sitemap within Jenkins. So we can pick the site that we want to scan. And then we say, well, when do we want that particular pipeline build to fail? So again, it's based off those metrics we spoke around earlier. So the severity level and the confidence level. We can permit a number of issues if we wish to do so as well, if we've got a particular threshold. We can also generate a copy of that report. So from a development standpoint or developer, he or she might not even need to access the UI. They can initiate scans from here and get copies of those reports with the detailed analysis, with the remediation advice, etc. And once we've done that, we can then build that job, and that's going to send an API-based scan across to Enterprise. So if we jump in here, we can see that's been initiated. And then back in Jenkins, we can monitor that through the console. But the driver is giving you that kind of integration between the two. So Jenkins has that awareness of where the scan is up to, what issues are being found, and knows to fail the build based on our parameters. Okay, folks, that's it in terms of the demo. Just a quick fire tour of Burp Suite Enterprise. Now we're going to discuss some roadmap items, but if there's anything we didn't show you within the demo, again, feel free to reach out to us, but the trial is a great opportunity to get hands-on with some of those features. Over to you, Hannah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. Really useful. Yeah, and if, like Alex said, if there's anything that we didn't cover, if you do have any questions following that, obviously, please feel free to drop a question in the Q&A box now, or when we follow up with you after this, just drop us a message and we can help get you set up on a trial or answer your question. So we have our roadmap publicly available. It is direct from our site, and I've just taken a simple snippet here, but please visit the site for full access. However, we did promise you a sneak peek, and Alex is going to run through some major UI and scanning configuration changes that are due in just the next couple of months.
So we've got some kind of quality of life updates coming down the road, which we've received a lot of feedback on, really in terms of usability and also feedback from whilst using the product, whilst performing scans. So there's two elements here that we're looking at bringing in quite soon. And one of those is the preset scan mode. So when you first install, you're going to be presented with some very easy to understand and sort of quick fire options that you can select to get up and running with your scans, to get testing. And it's a good starting point for when you first install. So you can see the options here under the preset scan mode. So really more of a focus on lightweight, fast, but we do give options for more of a balanced scan, which you can compare results-wise to the other two. And if you're definitely going for sort of thoroughness in terms of the coverage and auditing, we've got a deep-based scan there as well. We've just built out our gin and juice shop, which is a great testing platform if you don't necessarily have something internal that you have access to straight away. So that will always be available through the trial for you to run these scans against as well. The idea being it's more of a modern application, deliberately vulnerable with which to explore in terms of that testing. The next element was largely around, again, feedback from whilst you're performing your scans, because it's all well and good having the sort of automation, kicking off your scans and looking at results. Sometimes we want to know, well, where's our scan up to? Is it in a particular phase? Are there any errors that I should be looking at, etc.? So from a diagnosis perspective, this is going to be great. So we're going to introduce the concept of the timeline from when you initiate a scan job to when it completes. And it's going to run you through all of these phases so you know exactly where the scan is going to be up to. So you can see here, we've just kicked off a scan. It's in the queued status, waiting for an available scanning machine. We know when that started. Then the scan itself has started because it's been assigned to a scanning machine. And then we're going to hit the crawl phase. We can see things like requests, unique locations, where is it currently up to? Same for the auditing phase. We're going to start to get a breakdown of the issues that are being located in tandem with those requests and unique locations. We might start to populate some error messages if there's something that needs your attention. So again, you can start to troubleshoot that straight away. And then, of course, when the scan completes, we'll be notified and we can start analysing those results.
Thank you, Alex. That was really great. So I've just been checking the Q&A box, so thank you all for keeping my colleagues busy. I think they'll probably deserve a beer after this. But we've selected just a few questions that we can answer. And obviously, like I said, if there's any more information needed, please engage with us once we follow up. So one of the questions we've had is, I've trialed before. Please can I have another trial to test new features? So answer is absolutely. When we do reach out to you, if you would like another free 30-day fully featured trial, just let us know. We can issue that for us and happy to support you during that as well. We've also had, Alex, do you by any chance provide sample infrastructure as code, for example, Terraform or CloudFormation to ease the deployment?
Okay, so I mean, with the Helm charts that we've just released with Kubernetes, that's kind of the start of our journey with the containerization and also offering potentially other methods. So infrastructure as code, Terraform, et cetera, has definitely been discussed. We do have reference templates that are available, or rather, we've got an AWS one that's available at the moment. And again, we plan to build that out with more examples for other cloud platforms that you'll be able to use. But we're very much interested in your feedback in terms of your use case. So if the Helm chart doesn't necessarily fit your requirements day one, we're very much interested in where we could potentially change that. So any feedback is more than welcome.
Well, and we have to confirm, I will not be limited to the number of applications I can scan or the number of users. That's correct. We don't limit you to a number of applications, domains, URLs, users, anything else. It's only scan concurrency. Unlike most other web vulnerability scanners, Burp Suite Enterprise Edition scans can be assigned and reassigned across any websites, applications, and URLs. We have here, are there plans for a fully hosted solution, either SaaS or PaaS? Okay,
so not at the moment. You would look after and fully manage the infrastructure application for Burp Suite Enterprise yourselves. It is something we've discussed. We'll likely be going down that route at some point. We don't have a current ETA, but I would certainly say watch this space in regards to that.
Great. And I'll just pick up one more for you, Alex. This is something that does come up a lot. How long does a scan typically take? Is there an average amount of time?
Okay, so I mean, there is no real average. It does vary between customers. Predominantly, you're looking at the size of the application and also the scan configuration you're using will have the sort of largest impact on how long a scan is taking. You saw those options around the sort of scan mode idea that's coming down the line, that will absolutely give you the capability to run something like a quick scan if that's your preference, or something that's sort of more thorough, more deep. But we also have just introduced an option around setting exactly what that scan time frame is. So if you do have a window that's quite strict in the sense of what that scan time needs to be, we have just added that capability as well.
Great. Thank you. So I guess on to what happens next. Just to finish this off, first of all, thank you all for your questions. If we haven't responded to them on the call, we will be responding via email anyway, the answers to all the questions. So don't worry, we'll have you covered on that. As I said, the recording of today's PortSwigginar will be available on YouTube shortly. So we'll be including the link in that. If you've previously evaluated Burp Suite Enterprise Edition and you would like another trial, please just respond to the email that we send you. If you're an existing customer, if you require more concurrent scans or need further support, again, don't hesitate to reach out to our team or the support team. And finally, if you are someone who's currently trialing the product, you do have full access to our support team. So if you don't know where to find them, again, just respond to the email and we'll happily put you in their direction. And finally, just a massive thank you for everyone who came to the call today. It's been lovely speaking with you, and I look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.